Everyone, welcome. This is the GTM AI podcast, episode number 23, where Adam Smith, the CEO and co-founder of Workbounce, joins me to talk how helpful or not are AI agents for GTM teams. Sponsored by the GTM AI Academy, your go-to source for learning how to use AI in companies, teams, and in your individual workflow. Business impact over learning tools.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. This is yet another episode of the GTM AI podcast. I am Coach K, and I am so pleased to have my man, Adam Smith, of Workbounce with me on today's episode. How are you, my man?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good, dude. You and I have had several chats over the last couple of weeks, so it's been nice to get to know you better. And I know you are, I don't know if you're okay if I share this, but your wife is literally about to give birth to a baby this week. And so you've had a couple extra moments with me to take the time to do a podcast episode. So I appreciate that.
We've had 3 or 4 chats, and I think I said it. I was like, we should have just recorded these. This would have been a great podcast.
I know, yeah, we had some great convos.
I'm glad we're doing it now. But yeah, she's ready to pop. So I've got a couple of days of getting stuff done, and this is one of the things I wanted to get done before I went away. But yeah, super excited.
I'm honored you would, and she is endorsing this. So just so everyone know, he's not slacking off on his duties as his husband. He's doing a good job, but I get a little bit of time with him, which is good. So first off, would love to dive into yours. What I want to know more about with your introduction is the stuff that's not on LinkedIn. So for example, tell me a little bit more about your journey as your intro, and tell me how that led you to being a leader of Workbounce now when doing this AI craziness.
Yeah. All right. So just as a brief intro of what we do now, I'm one of the co-founders of Workbounce. My co-founder, Rowan, and I worked together for quite a few years at a company called Pecan. And we went through the whole scaling journey. I was a pretty early employee, maybe like around employee 20 or something like that. And went through that whole journey to acquisition by Workday. So Workday acquired Pecan. And I didn't really have a job title for the first couple of years. I was special projects. My co-founder, Rowan, built and ran the Rev Ops function at Pecan. And so I was acting as like chief of staff, special projects to a couple of the founders and the chief revenue officer. And so between us, we tackled like all of these different aspects of scaling a revenue function. From when we started, it was a couple of salespeople and the CRO. And then when we left, it was 5 markets: APAC, UK, Nordics, USA, and Germany, with sales teams in each of those and all the challenges that go with that. So we went on that scaling journey, and what we found was that, and you probably see it all the time, but we use Slack really heavily. This was pre-pandemic, 2017 to 2020. Yep. So remote work wasn't a massive thing, although we did have a work from home remote policy at Pecan. So we did have people working remotely and working from home. But the biggest challenge that we hit was when we launched into the US market, we hired this really great sales team in New York. We were already closing deals from the London office, and we just couldn't get this US team ramped. And the thing that I realized is that the most successful sales team was sat next to me, Rowan, the product team. Like, they were just close by physically. And the teams that were struggling were the ones that were asking questions in Slack and waiting. Time zone difference. The customers asked me, can we do this thing? And then product team's offline now because it's nighttime in Denmark. And then the next day, and all these kind of micro frictions and internal support issues that hit a revenue team as you scale was why we started Workbounce. So it's a pretty long-winded intro, but
I love it.
The reason we did it is because we just had this problem, and we bought every sales enablement platform and the legacy CMS and LMS vendors, and they just didn't solve the problem for us. And that's how we ended up here.
Yeah. What you guys are doing is actually really unique. Just like doing the whole, something that's been hot this year in AI in general has just been agents. And so you're taking that and then applying it to more of an enterprise go-to-market function, which is just awesome. Would love to know, like, where do you see, because you mentioned classic, what I call the legacy system, even though they're not that old, but the legacy LMS, CMS, what's the biggest difference to you for those versus what your tool does now?
Yeah, I think the main thing is a difference in belief. And we say they're not that old, and it is true, because most of them were built in around like 2010, 2013. So like 10, 12 years old, which isn't that long in the grand scheme of things. but like nothing else in our work life is the same as it was in 2010 or 2013. And so from that point of view, they're like really outdated for the world that we're working in right now. And there's no really getting around that. The main difference is a difference in belief. So we don't believe in I personally don't believe in this. Obviously trickles down to the company and the product, that you can really solve sales enablement as a top-down project. But you can't roll into a company as an enablement director or VP enablement and say, all right, I'm going to get all my ducks in an order and I'm going to put them all in a CMS, and that's going to be the playbook, and that's going to be all the assets, and sales will be good after that. I know for sure that if you had a team of salespeople who were doing well and you hired a new salesperson and you put them in the same room on the sales floor with no content, no collateral, no training, no systems, whatever, right? They've got a phone, they've got email, all that stuff. That person will probably become successful if they've got a good team around them. Now you put a sales rep in their kitchen as a 24-year-old graduate with all the systems, all the collateral, all the content, and no physical team and no one to turn to and say, hey, how do I do this thing? Did I do good on that call? And their chance of being successful is pretty low. And so with Workbounce, we're trying to bridge that gap, which is, it might seem like a small thing when someone asks for help in Slack, but what they're missing is that sort of stuff. I'm going to pause because I just got to run and do these groceries.
Go.
All right, thanks. Hopefully that was a good answer and I didn't get cut off. I'll be back in a sec.
You're okay, man.
All right, I'm back.
No worries, my man.
Groceries in the house, safe and secure.
Groceries are okay. This is good. Oh yeah, let's talk about that for a second. So I've been at Animal now for 10, 12 years, and I can actually tell you from the view of being on a floor of a sales floor, having people just have no onboarding whatsoever and just being around a team, like there's definitely strengths and weaknesses. Like I get your point. I'm gonna actually push back a little bit because I've seen it actually go slower when no systems are in place, like no onboarding program, no process. And I know you know that. But in general, I would agree with you. Being in person obviously helps a lot. And I think that's a dynamic that hasn't been taken into consideration when you're working hybrid or remotely. In fact, that's, I think, one of the biggest reasons why people are moving to back to hybrid or back to in person, because of that communication thing you're talking about right there, because it's so powerful.
Yeah.
So curious, like for those of part of the audience is not AI techie, but I am curious. I'm going to ask you a tech question. Are you leveraging several different AI models, using your own? Tell me more about the back end, the AI side.
Yeah. So we started Workbounce in 2020 and we raised the seed round based on this idea of AI co-pilot for sales teams, which sounds super commonplace now because there's 100 of them. But in 2020, there weren't really any. And it was based on the idea that we just talked about. And the first problem was that we didn't have any data to train on because GPT wasn't really it wasn't available in the States. And we thought we'd have to build a lot of this stuff ourselves. The first thing we do is set about building a really simple version that would allow us to train data. And then when GPT 3.5 was released, it was like this huge leap forward. And it immediately solved a bunch of the problems that we've been slowly trying to solve. So we had this huge refactoring and push to embrace OpenAI. And so that was the first version of layering in large language models. And I think that's a common story actually for a lot of SaaS companies. And then as we've operationalized large language models to solve the problems that we're trying to solve, and if I had to summarize Workbounce, I would say that we are an applied AI company. So we don't develop novel models. Although saying that, we do actually have a few of our own models that we've built and we use for different, very specific functions, but they're small and they're not something to write home about, but they're very useful for what we use them for. But we try and operationalize and apply what's out there. And from when 3.5 was released, GPT, to now, there's open source. Anthropic has Claude. There's so many different vendors and options. And then there's a bunch of fine-tuned models available for different task-specific stuff, right? So what we try and do when we approach a new, because you've got two ends to it. You've got real-world problems over here, and then new shiny tech over here. And you want to keep up with the new shiny tech. You got to make sure it plugs into the real world problems, because otherwise it's just this nice thing to have. So we have these pipelines, and we try and break down problems into individual units of work. And for each individual unit of work, we apply the best model or solution. So yeah, we don't just work with OpenAI. We use Google's models, Claude, Anthropic, obviously OpenAI, and then some that we roll ourselves.
One thing I want to talk, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but what's cool is when you talked about developing content and how you use your own agents with multiple AI models to be able to develop it. Like that kind of thing is just like awesome. I love talking about that kind of thing. And you also have a layer of automation. So tell me more about that kind of thing. Like, how do the agents, when you say agent, let's define what that actually means first, because again, some people may not know what that means, but what is an agent? And then how do they interact with both humans and then other agents?
Yeah, oh man, I'm sure there's an actual definition of an AI agent, which if there is, I don't know what it is, but it is thrown around a lot. So you're going to have some idea of what it is. For me, and for how we use it internally and think about it, if you think about the jobs that we have, like your job, my job, account executive, SDR, content marketer, what they really are, they're just bundlings of units of work that are similar in context, and then allow us to conveniently bundle those into one human being so that you can build a team and a company and stuff. But those units of work are not the job in itself. And so I think I'm almost sure that as we go forward, the jobs that we do will get redefined, because parts of those units of work will be very susceptible to AI automation, and some of them won't be, especially the more human parts, like building trust, rapport, the kind of conversation that we've had right over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But some parts will be writing content, building pitch decks, all that stuff's very easy for an AI to do. And so we think of an agent as a chaining of units of work, or one specific unit of work that requires multiple steps to get a certain output, like write a blog post or summarize a document into training content or something like that. And so I think what you mentioned is, we obviously have our product that we sell to customers, which is the Workbounce platform, but inside the company, we have a bunch of AI agents that we've built to solve our own problems, like content creation. We have an email support bot called Sky that you can email and ask questions to, and it'll tell you about Workbounce. What else do we have? We have some other ones too that do certain things for us. And part of what we and my co-founder talk about a lot is that when we think about hiring someone, could we hire an AI to do it? And could we roll that ourselves internally? And often the answer is yeah. Like, rather than hiring a content agency or a content writer where you're paying, maybe $300 per article for your blog or something like that, we have our own internal content writer that's an AI that has multiple steps and multiple agents and actually multiple models from different providers involved at each step. But the output is like a human written blog post. And it costs about $5 per blog post instead of 300. So
how much of it you think there's going to, so let me back up a second. In an interview Sam Altman had a month ago, I think now, he talked about how we shouldn't be thinking about what jobs AI will take away. We should be thinking about tasks. And to me, tasks equals what you're talking about, units of work, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Things can be automated, which I find fascinating, because ever since I've heard that, I've been paying attention to my own, sorry, I just had crap fall off my desk. I've been paying attention to my own tasks, or like you said, units of work, and figuring out, okay, what could be possibly automated as a part of this, and how would I get good content out? Because right now, I think that's the gap, is that most people don't know. Number one, they don't trust the output that AI is giving them in general, and two, don't know how to automate it to get it to both the speed and quality that would be necessary to have it be usable, right?
Yeah.
How do you approach that? So number one, you trust it, and number two, it's giving you the quality you need to have to get the results you need.
Yeah, that's a good question. And maybe just for context as well, it's not like we're using like no code platforms or stringing
Right.
stuff together with Zapier, where we're writing these things ourselves in code from the ground up. And so
Right.
because we do that, we can build in test cases and we can be a lot more specific in our control over what we're doing than if you were just trying to get, like a custom GPT to follow instructions and stuff. The main thing I think people misunderstand, and we're talking about large language models specifically now,
Right.
is that what they're really good is at compressing information. They're not very good at expanding information. So because they're next token predictors, which means you give it a sentence like it was a dark and stormy, and they're going to say night, they predict next token. Now, if you just give it a very short sentence that says, okay, write me a blog post on, I don't know, spin selling or challenger sales or something, and nothing else, it has to dig into its token predictions, and it's going to spit out basically the average of all those token predictions that it's learned in its training. And the average of all of the training data is not very good because it's the
Right.
average of the internet generally. So there's some great stuff in there. There's some poor stuff in there, and the average is somewhere in the middle, and it's a bit less than human quality right now. But if you give that same prompt with, let's say, the newest models have 128K token windows, which is about 4 Harry Potters and the Philosopher's Stone. I think I read as an analogy the other day, that might be wrong, 4 or 5, which is quite a lot of text. So you could put the top 3 books on spin selling, for example, into that context, and then say, write me a blog post on spin selling. And now instead of having to predict it and make it up from its own training data, it can compress all of these things down and give you a really high informational, like high density, high
Quality, yeah.
nutritional value. Yeah.
Mhm.
And what you can do is a step further than that. You can say, okay, don't write me a blog post, write me an outline for a blog post. And then now improve on that outline for a blog post. And now write a draft for the first section of that blog post. And now improve on that draft. And then you get it to continue from that. So this is a long way of answering your question, but the way we try and ensure quality and predictability is that we break things down into micro steps, and then we hyper refine those things. And we always make sure that we're giving a lot more context for each of those steps than we're asking in output, basically. And that's the best way you can improve quality and reduce hallucinations, is by making sure it has just 10 times more context than you're asking for in the output.
Yeah. Fine tune yeah. I had another guest on the podcast with Close Strong, talked about intelligent application of AI, where it kind of does that same thing. It narrows the training data. So it's very targeted and very narrow instead of having this massive amount of knowledge it has to cipher through to get you a good answer. And the
Yeah.
concept there is powerful. So question then, when it comes to like your everyday user of Workbounce and they're going into the Slack to figure out whatever question or answer, whatever, what you're essentially doing, because we just barely before this call tested out the tech on the Academy, is you're saying, okay, instead of asking a question to ChatGPT on this massive, massive set of data that ChatGPT is trained on, instead, let's focus on these 5 PDFs or this document or this whatever thing. So when they ask the question, they get the right answer back. Is that correct? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, we specifically tell the LLMs to ignore all of their training data as part of the prompt. We don't want them
Right.
regurgitating anything at all. And we do validation to that effect as well. So it's just a quick kind of intro to how Workbounce works. So you connect all of your Google Drive, Notion docs, Slack messages, all that stuff. You curate AI experts, which is, imagine AI subject matter expert. And then you can put in whatever you want. You can have a pricing expert, competitor expert, etc. What you're really doing is recreating the people in your business who get bombarded with these Slack questions all day. Like, how do I do this? How do I pitch against this? How do I deposition this competitor? What's our pricing for this type of customer? That sort of stuff. And so you're feeding that context into them from the documents that already exist, Google Docs, wherever they live. And then when a user asks that question, we go and find not just the documents, but the most relevant parts of all those documents from across the whole knowledge base of what you've synced from your business. And then that gets fed to the AI. And the AI is then tasked with saying, from these very specific sources, can you help this user? And then another AI will validate that the answer is valid, and then some other steps too. But what we're never asking the AI is like, can you just tell us the answer? We're saying, and we're not even asking it to make up a good answer. We're saying, look at the sources and just tell us if there's an answer in there. And it becomes a much simpler task when you're saying like, is it this or that, as opposed to elaborate on this idea that the user's asking. And so that's how we deliver answers to users. And I think if you look at, I'll give you another example. I know we're going to talk about this later, but Momentum, who I know you're an advisor for, and we're a customer of, and they're a customer of Workbounce. I love Momentum's product because what they do is they take my massive call transcripts and they condense them down into such useful, valuable information. Most of that call transcript I don't need to know about, but I get the really key points. And that's how I think the best like applied AI companies are working with these models. It's a similar pattern. It's take a lot, condense it down to the useful parts.
So in the scenario you just talked about where Workbounce is just sourcing content, let's just say, for example, it's a 65-page sales methodology playbook, right? It's not pointing out to them where to find it, or could it help with that? Like in that scenario, is it just saying, here's your 65-page document, have fun looking? Or how does it help past that point?
Yeah, no. So it'll give the answer and it'll paraphrase, summarize, quote from the original document.
Cool.
And often what you'll see in businesses is that there might be like the de facto playbook and the source of truth, right? And this is where, but it's never the case. That's the only document that exists that talks about it. Totally. And you'll often find those conflicting documents, right? I went in my Google Drive now. I have 10 pricing documents that have just evolved over the last 2 years or something. And everyone has that, right? And so there's these other challenges, which is the sources say 5 different things on pricing because it's changed. So you have to factor in these other things like when was the document last edited, who edited it, and that sort of thing. So our goal, really, what we try and deliver to the user is, here's an answer to your question based on the assumption of like the documents I have, when they were updated, all of that stuff. And here's where you can go dig into the sources if you just want to verify that or get more context on the answer. So you get the answer and then you get the source documents that it points towards.
Love it. Okay, good. So a question that I told you before the show, like one thing I focus on the Academy and with the show itself is about not just learning cool tech and tools, but actual business impact. So we're talking about increased profit, increased revenue, decreased cost, decreased risk, increased customer satisfaction. Of those, do you have any customer stories you have where business impact was very evident from the before scenario to the after scenario? What can you give us a story of somebody?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when we do this when we pitch, right? Like I'm a salesperson, I go into sales pitches and you're trying to phrase it in terms of business value because no one really cares about your features. Like no one cares at all. They just care about the OKRs that their bonus is tracking against. And so we obviously, when we pitch, we try and tie it to those things. My favorite story to tell is we have a customer, I won't name them because I don't think they would.
It's okay. It's all right. You need to say anonymous.
Tell this story.
That's okay.
But so they did this huge feature launch. They were building up to it for a while. Really excited about it, massive. And we have a feature in the product called Topics, where we track all the questions that are being asked in Slack and in the web app and stuff. And then we do what's called clustering. It's an unsupervised learning method. And this is one of our own models, not an LLM one, where we then surface up the most important topics from inside your business and say, look, this is what's been talked about a lot. Firstly, do you have knowledge for this? Do you want to jump in and try and help them? But also maybe you need to go address this. And the interesting thing we saw is that you see this new feature shoot up in their trending revenue team topics. And you think, that's awesome. Like they're out there selling it. It's obviously going well. And then when you dig into the data, what you found was that there are a lot of issues with the product. And the revenue team were mostly having trouble just even demoing it properly without the demo going off the rails.
Wow.
And the revenue team were like, this is messing up my deal and blah, blah. And so you dive into that, and I don't know how you would attribute a number to it, but the long and the short of it was that a lot of times you'll see an issue in a sales team and you'll say, and as a sales leader, it's not the team's fault. There's a product issue. There's a gap in the marketing or whatever. You cannot back that up. You've got no way to prove that. You're going to sales take the brunt of a lot of things, right? So you're just going to get told it's not a product issue, get on with that. But there was meaningful data that they could show and say, look, we can show you exactly where it's messing up our sales conversations. And so there's another aspect to this, which is I've never once read an ROI case study and believed it because there's so many factors that go into something going well or not going well that they're all kind of bullshit anyway. But
Right.
I can confidently say we had a meaningful impact on helping them resolve that issue as one. And I like that story, not because it's like the most impact we've had. You know, we help companies like speed up their onboarding, reduce sales failure rates during that ramp period, right? And those have revenue attached to them. It's that it was a more of a strategic priority. And yeah, like we were not saying, oh, you know, this sales team attained more revenue or whatever, because it'd be very like hubristic to so that's because of us. We did that. We helped you. We grew your revenue 20%. No, it didn't, but we probably helped. But
Yeah.
we're not going to take credit for it. It'd be crazy. But yeah, that's my favorite example of it. Because without that visibility, you just have no idea what's going on.
That's the case with any team internally. That's the case with any techs is say, hey, we helped you raise your win rates by 35% or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors. And like, whenever we come up with the AI that actually tracks all that to give actual results, that'd be awesome. But until that point, I don't know if anybody can do that.
Yeah.
However, I've been asking this question a lot to people, which is, what is the value of the decision? Well, what's the value of good information to make a good decision? And that's something where it's like coaching is, what's the value of good coaching? By the outputs and stuff you're getting.
Yeah.
But coaching is really there to help you with making better decisions and thinking better.
Yeah.
So to your point, being able to deliver data and outputs in a way that can help them make better decisions faster, there's a value to that. Now, how and what that is, that's a good question. But everyone knows there's good value behind making better decisions. So I love that thought.
Yeah.
Let's transition a little bit. I'd love to hear what you are excited about. I know in the next 6 months in the AI world is like a lifetime, but before the end of the year, what are you excited about both for your company and then just AI in general for business?
That's a great question. So my co-founder and I are big fans of, there's a series, we're both big sci-fi fans generally, like we always have been. But there's a series of books called the Culture Books. Elon Musk is a big fan of them too. All of his rockets are named after ships from the books, and they're AI-powered spaceships. They're like super intelligences. Anyway, the culture has this, it's like a post-scarcity society where AI runs everything, but it's harmonious and everyone's good and there's stuff going on, but it's mostly good. And one of the biggest things that stands out for me in those books is that people aren't like looking at screens because everything's just embedded everywhere. There's intelligence everywhere. You don't need to be like scrolling on a screen to see the thing you need to see. And so the thing that I'm most excited about, not the 1 trillion strong humans, this intergalactic society, which is in the book, but although that would be cool, it's just the immediate short-term gain of, can I get away from my screen and still do work successfully? Can I put my AirPods in, take my kid for a walk around the block or to the park and talk to an AI and do meaningful work? Not like how you talk to Siri now, where you can check the weather or like what's on your calendar. Actually triage things that are coming in that require responses and thoughtful answers, and have an AI that has my work context, my personal life context. And we're not that far away from it. I think and I'm sure there are people out there in fact, I know there are people out there building it now, and I'm pretty certain that if I sat down for 6 months to a year with nothing else to do, I could probably build that for myself just by stringing together other people's models and other people's infrastructure and stuff. So we're definitely going to get that soon. And that's the thing I'm most excited about generally with AI. It's how it will free us from certain constraints in work. And just take the screen thing out of it, like how much admin and non-core value add work that we have to do. I do it as a founder, you do it. Every single person spends a lot of their time doing this kind of work that isn't value add. It's just housekeeping. And that is mostly going to go away. And that's super exciting too, because what happens when you free people from, forget about like B2B SaaS and stuff, which is where we operate, but take researchers working on, I don't know, like cancer therapies, for example, right? If you can speed up their productivity, if you can times it by 10, what can we achieve? And so that's super interesting. But selfishly, I also just don't want to have to deal with so much bullshit all the time. And then for the business, again, selfishly as a founder, right? I want the business to succeed. I want us to do really well. I think the thing that I'm most excited about, I think there's two things. Obviously, the models are getting better, cheaper, easier to work with, unlocks a lot more possibilities. We can do things that we couldn't do before. But I think it's also just the kind of acceptance and hunger for AI maturing. I looked at Palantir's quarterly earnings that came out a couple of weeks ago, and they have grown their US commercial segment massively. like year over year, because suddenly all of these Fortune 500 companies are waking up and they're saying, we need enterprise AI. And Palantir is a good choice to do that. They have this AI platform, which historically they've sold to government and law enforcement and stuff.
Yeah.
But what you can take away from that is that there's this explosive demand for applied AI at all levels of the enterprise now.
Right.
And as that matures for startups like us, Momentum as the other example, what we were facing a year ago was I would talk to a CISO and they say, we're not sure, we don't want to share our data with an AI model. And those questions like not coming up now. Like, how can I do this? How do I get this implemented? And so I think that is exciting too, that we're just maturing in how we relate to AI and accept it. Whereas even a year ago, it's still the Wild West, but it was like the Wild West a year ago, and people were very
Yeah.
fearful of it.
So I'm curious, last couple of questions for you. I keep thinking about the Jarvis thing with Iron Man. That's a good example of,
Yeah.
think about all the things that AI could take off your plate, but not only that, but for a creative standpoint, even though Iron Man did build his first suit out of a box in the cave, his later suits, he never would have been able to do without some sort of AI intelligence, be able to work with him and think about things and to collaborate with and then create with it. That's the part I'm really excited about, is getting some sort of Jarvis level-esque assistant, so to speak, that you can literally just create with,
Yeah.
because all the other mundane items are taken off your plate and your brain has the space to actually create and think differently. And then AI can keep up with you enough to push it to the next level and do whatever calculations it would take you, however much time it would take you to do it manually. But pretty excited
Yep.
about that.
Yeah, we have, as like human beings, we have a bandwidth problem, right? We can only read so many words per minute, and we can only speak so many words per minute and type so many words per minute. So think of that as like input and output, and you can convert that into a bit rate, right? And so human beings are like the very first dial-up modems, and the current generation of LLMs are like the fastest five. It's not even a good comparison because the order of magnitude in how much information they can take in quickly and then triage and filter is massive. But what that means
Yeah,
is, to
totally.
your point, which is, if I don't have to understand every aspect of everything that I'm doing, and if I don't have to look at every single detail, this kind of feedback loop of having this kind of AI bandwidth shield around me that says, here are the important things, here's the key things, have you thought about this?
Yep.
I do it when I'm coding now. I have this LLM plugin installed in my workspace. And as I'm writing code and building stuff, I'll ping it quickly. I have a shortcut, ping it over to the LLM. How could I improve
That's
this?
awesome.
It gives me a list of like ways that this code could be more secure, more efficient, things that I've missed.
That's
And then
awesome.
I can merge them in if I want to. And this kind of, I 100% when I'm coding, I'm collaborating with the AI all of the time. I'm not
Yeah.
just like writing code by myself. There's two people doing it and we're a team. And I think that with Jasper, right? With content writing and stuff now, this kind of collaborative process, I think that's
Well,
going to be really common.
I think that's what I tell people all the time, like when they're afraid about being replaced by AI tools, whatever. I'm like, it's not like, at this point, you can have AI critique itself, but technically it doesn't know what's good or not. Like you said, it's just predicting tokens and next words
Yeah.
and phrases and all that kind of stuff. So the magic comes in when you have an expert who knows the content. For example, if I had a brand new enablement person and all I said was, go build an onboarding program, and they went into ChatGPT and said, build me an onboarding program, and that's all I said, it would produce a generalized onboarding program that would be better than nothing, but would be mediocre, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus if I told an expert who knew onboarding, maybe not knew AI, but at least knew what good looked like and could push the AI to that point, then the results you get are way different, way better. So
Mm-hmm.
having that combination of that expertise and knowing what good looks like and pushing the AI and knowing how to collaborate with an AI to push it to the level that's where the sweet spot is, in my opinion. Because the other side don't have expertise, one side don't have the AI ability, mix them together, that's where magic happens. So,
Yeah, you need context, right? Without
yep.
context, you can't do that much. There's this other question off the back of that, which is, if you're a graduate now, you're an entry-level employee, you're in trouble, right? Because there's massive productivity and leverage available for people with experience that you
Yep.
can't really benefit from because you don't know what good is yet. And
Yep.
previously, you would get to know that because the very experienced people didn't have that leverage, so they would pass that off to you. You would be the LLM for the experienced person. You would output work
Right.
and they would give you feedback on it, and then you would learn through that process. Don't think we would hire a junior engineer now because we have LLMs that
Right.
are basically junior engineers. So how are they going to get that experience and learn? And I've thought about that a bit, and I don't have a good solution for it. And I don't really know how that's going to play out, but I can imagine it's going to be very difficult to learn the way that we learned even 5 years ago from
Yeah.
mentors. And
Yeah. I thought the same thing. Like, where's that gap coming in? Because it's going to get bigger and bigger. But at the same time, it's like the CEO of, oh, I can't remember which company it was, but he said that he feels like everyone's freaking out about jobs. Like, we're going to create twice as many jobs we needed
oh yeah,
before
for
with
sure.
not enough to do
Yeah.
it. So I
Yeah.
agree with that. I think just like the Industrial Revolution created all these new jobs and everyone's freaking out about how we don't have any more people to put on horseshoes. So
Yeah.
we have all these other stuff out there that we need to have now. So
Yeah, we need more people. The two things we need more of, we need more people and we need more energy. And then we're on a trajectory. We need abundance of energy and abundance of humans. And then we can take advantage of this stuff properly.
yeah,
You're right.
love it. Telling to be cognizant and want to make sure I don't take all the time because I could spend a lot of time talking to you. But first off, workbounce.com, best place to find you. Is that right?
Yeah, workbounce.com. We have a demo video up there. You can book in a call, chat to us. We're very friendly.
Yeah, you are friendly, I would say. You both, you and Rowan both. I've met with you both. You're both awesome guys. And just want to say thank you. I'll put in your website, obviously, your information. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to talk to you?
You can drop me an email. My email is adam@workbounce.com. I'll respond
Awesome.
to everything that isn't just a spammy SDR campaign, but everything else I'll reply
A
to
pit
you.
slap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That's
but
awesome.
everything else.
Well, man, much success to you. Super excited for you in the tech and can't wait to see where things go. But again, just want to say thank you for coming on and joining me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Been a blast.
You're welcome, man.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.